Hey guys, this is Zorgaroth, storytelling for your health. I know you all have heard a lot about the deep web lately, and I would like to share my deep web experience with you. I will warn you that the things I'm about to tell you may creep you out and even disturb you, so viewer discretion is advised. How I came about discovering the deep web was inside a Reddit discussion one night. In this discussion, users were talking about how they could buy drugs using something called the deep web. Some users were saying you could buy hitmen, fake IDs, and fake passports even. None of this intrigued me, so I kept reading thinking that this was all too fake. It was when I came across a user stating that he had hired a hacker to hack his friend's computer that I was finally interested in this deep web. I myself like stories of hackers and hacking, so I felt like I needed to investigate on this topic myself. Bored and curious, I started to Google how to get access to the deep web like an idiot. I came across links that stated you had to install a program called Tor browser, so I installed it without thinking twice. Once I had it installed, I began researching how to use it. I came across ways to get this hidden wiki so you can begin browsing the deep web. Most of the links were services offered, drugs, and disturbing porn. So I thought to myself, what a waste of time. As I was about to exit out of everything, a link caught my eye that read paranormal and UFOs. I enjoy stories of poltergeists, demons, aliens, and ghosts, so again, like an idiot, I clicked on it. The first thing that popped up were more links. One read, government classified files, which was garbage. Another read, shadow people caught with hacked security cameras, which was what you could find on YouTube. I was very disappointed with this deep web. I thought I was going to find some really cool stuff here, but it was a waste of time. I browsed a little more and found a post titled, Summoning the Wicked One. After landing on pointless post, I was not going to click on this one. I was going to exit and call it a night and go to bed. I wish I had. After clicking on the post, it directed me to a site with an empty black background that had a box in the middle that read, once you've entered, there is no going back. Click I agree to continue to the ritual. I was spooked about what I was about to see because there was a bunch of disturbing things on the internet as is. I clicked I agree and waited to see what opened. Nothing but a black screen. I waited a bit longer because sometimes the Tor browser had issues with internet speed, and I already spent this much time on the deep web and had nothing better to do. I muted my speakers because I was convinced this was going to be one of those jump scares. After some more time of waiting, still nothing happened. I was getting bored, and then I seen an image flicker on the black screen, and all I could make out was a man in a hooded cloak. At least that is what I thought I saw. I smirked and thought to myself, nice try. After a few seconds, a window popped up that had a play icon in the center of it. I clicked it, and I felt nervous. The stream opened and I could make out 10 people in black hooded cloaks standing close together in a circle. It seemed as if they were standing over something, but I couldn't make it out. It looked like they were in an abandoned insane asylum, because I could see graffiti on the walls and there was a medical bed with restraints attached to it. The camera angle was like viewing from a security camera, so I could see a wide range of what was going on. A man in a hooded red cloak walked into the room and started to speak. I gradually turned up my speakers to hear what was going on in the video. The man in the red cloak was speaking in some language that sounded similar to Latin. He was reading out of a book, and the words I could make out most were Ankh Ablokshonem, Ankh Ablokshonem, every now and again. I can still hear him shouting these words to this day. Things started to get weird as all the hooded people started backing away from what they were standing over. Is that a person? I thought to myself. The black hooded people backed away out of frame and I could see a woman unconscious, laying there motionless. She had on a white tank top with blue jeans. She looked like she was in her 20s maybe. The man in the red hooded cloak walked closer to her while chanting and the others joined in on the chant. My hair stood up on the back of my neck and I quickly tried to convince myself that this was just a hoax. The chants grew louder and louder, growing into shouts that were making my speakers vibrate heavily. As I looked away to turn down my speakers, the chanting stopped almost immediately. I looked up at my screen to see why they stopped chanting, and what I saw horrified me. The woman was standing straight up, motionless. Her neck appeared to be broken from the way it was angled, and her left foot was facing the opposite direction from her right foot. At this point, I was terrified and kept telling myself that this was fake over and over in my head. The man in the red hood walked up to the woman and shouted, "Take this offering and be with us." Is she possessed? I wondered to myself. The woman looked up at the man in red and let out a horrible scream of agony. She pushed the man away, sending him to the ground. The man crawled away as fast as he could out of frame, away from her. She stood there for a few seconds staring at the ground. She started to whimper as she looked around the room. She looked confused and horrified as she looked down at her feet. She whimpered, "Where am I?" Someone in the background shouted, "We are losing him." That is when all the hooded people walked towards the woman, chanting like they were before. The woman started screaming in agony as they walked closer. She started to twitch violently that made her screams come to a stop. Vomit mixed with blood ran from her mouth that made her gag in a disgusting way. She stopped twitching and stared at the floor again. Silence filled the room, and they all stared at her as if they were waiting for something to happen. She looked up and stared at the man in red. "Are you in there?" said the man in red. No response. After a few seconds, she was thrown across the room and hit the concrete wall with a horrible impact that resembled the sound of a 2x4 hitting a solid object. Blood dripped from the wall where her head had made impact. Nobody had touched her, yet she was thrown with great force. She could not have jumped back on her own. That was just too fast. These were the thoughts that were running through my mind. She laid there for what seemed like a minute before her twisted leg raised up in the air and she was dragged all the way to the center of the room by nothing, or something. The woman was lifted into an upright standing position. She looked around the room frantically and screamed, "Help me!" before she started ripping at her own chest vigorously. She ripped at her skin, peeling chunks of flesh off and throwing them to the ground. The pain in her screams and the gore was more than I could handle, so I went to exit out of the entire Tor browser. I clicked the exit button repeatedly and nothing happened. I pressed Ctrl-Alt-Delete repeatedly and still nothing happened. A message popped up saying, "We said there was no going back." The woman's screams were so horrific that I ripped my speakers from my computer and threw them to the floor. As I looked back to my screen to try to exit out, all the hooded people revealed themselves and were staring straight into the camera at me. Their faces were disfigured with a gray tint to their skin. The woman was on the floor behind them, dead from her self-mutilation. I held down the power button on my computer and nothing happened. Another message popped up saying, "You were warned. Now we want you." I reached under my desk and grabbed the power cord and yanked it from the socket. I looked up and the computer was still on, with a message that had all of my information on it. My full name, my hometown, even my home address. "We are watching you," was right under my information. The computer shut off and I was left alone in the darkness of my own room.